people who are calling for a ceasefire now do not understand Hamas. That is not possible. It would be such a gift to Hamas because they would spend whatever time there was a ceasefire in effect rebuilding their armaments, creating stronger positions to be able to fend off an eventual assault by the Israelis. So we're in a very different world. I don't think it had to be the world we're in, but that's where we are, and we've got to figure our way forward through it.
You said something that I thought was incredibly important and needed to be said at this time, which is those calling for a ceasefire don't understand Hamas. Can you explain that? Because I know there is a deep passion and compassion for the Palestinian people and their suffering, but there is this entity there that is so dangerous.
Well, Alyssa, you're absolutely right. And, I feel so personally committed to trying to figure out how to help the Israelis and the Palestinians live in peace. And I negotiated a ceasefire in November of 2012, so I understand what it takes to try to stop violence. But remember, there was a ceasefire on October 6th that Hamas broke by their barbaric assault on peaceful civilians and their kidnapping, their killing, their beheading, their terrible, inhumane savagery. There was a ceasefire. It did not hold because Hamas chose to break it. So you have to keep several things in your head at the same time, and that is, number one, Hamas is a terrorist organization. It has made very clear it is committed to the elimination of the state of Israel, and it has consistently broken ceasefires over a number of years. Israel has a right to defend itself, as any country would. Ukraine has a right to defend itself against an invasion, an unlawful, inhumane invasion by Russia. And Israel should conduct itself by the laws of war and do everything it can to prevent and limit civilian casualties. Those three things are all true themselves. And so when I said a couple of weeks ago that it wasn't time for a ceasefire because it would enable Hamas to rearm and reposition, because I've been to Gaza, and Gaza is a highly populated urban environment. And what has been going on now for a number of years under Hamas rule is the building of over 200 miles of tunnels under Gaza, the storing of munitions, all kinds of explosives under hospitals, under refugee camps, under civilian targets, the use of civilians as really just tools of war by Hamas. That has all been going on. And so when I said you could not have a ceasefire, people didn't understand that Hamas would use it for their own purposes. I think we're now moving toward a position where the idea of these humanitarian pauses that the Biden administration has been promoting are now, I think, on the table and should be. And what would that mean? Well, first of all, let's remember over 240 innocent people, not just Israelis, people from other countries. The second biggest number of people taken by Hamas are workers from Thailand who were working in agriculture. So this is a multinational hostage situation. A humanitarian pause would enable two things to happen if Hamas would agree, and that is let the hostages go. Yeah. These are innocent civilian people. They should not be held as, captives to Hamas. And let in more humanitarian aid that actually gets where it's intended, not into the hands of Hamas. Yeah. So if we work on all of that, I think it's possible, given where the current situation is, because the Israelis are now in Gaza with ground troops. They have cut off the north from the south. They have surrounded Gaza City, which is the central command structure of the Hamas militants. So I think now would be a good time to consider doing that. But a ceasefire done prematurely benefits those who do not abide by any laws, by any rules, by any human, character value about the value of life. So that was not, it was much too premature. Now I think the pauses should be considered.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, because the ceasefire option, or at least the humanitarian pauses, is a very popular concept, not only in this country, but around the world, because we're seeing the death of at least 10,000 innocent Palestinian civilians, and half of those are children.
Yeah.
So former President Obama said, quote, and collective punishment is against international human rights law. So former President Obama said, quote, if you want to solve the problem, then you have to take in the whole truth. And you then have to admit nobody's hands are clean here, that all of us are complicit to some degree. Is that, in your view, a wake-up call for Democrats? A lot of the international community agrees with him. Do you agree that the Israeli government, as well as the U.S., are part of the problem as well?
Well, I think that the problem predates October 7th, and I think that's what President Obama was talking about, because let's remember, this is a very long and complicated history.
Yeah.
My husband, with the Israeli government at the time in 2000, offered a Palestinian state to the Palestinians, at that time run by Arafat, Yasser Arafat.
The PLO.
And the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which, by the way, took out of its charter violence against Israel. So you got to separate the Palestinians who believe that there is some future of peace with Hamas, which believes it has to destroy Israel.
Yeah.
Those are two different organizations, and they have to be viewed in that way. Arafat turned that down. There would have been a Palestinian state now for 23 years if he had not walked away from it. There was another attempt when I was Secretary of State to try to, bring the Palestinians and the Israelis together. That didn't work out. Israel left Gaza in 2005, and forcibly ejected 50,000 Israelis who were living in Gaza. They left all of their infrastructure. They had a big infrastructure of greenhouses where they were supplying fruits, vegetables, flowers, et cetera. And the Palestinians deserved to have a productive, successful economy in Gaza. Hamas came in and basically destroyed all of that and killed a lot of other Palestinians. So I think when President Obama says that, it requires us to look at the history. And of course, history holds all of us accountable. Yeah. And that is a fair statement. But today, we have to look at where we are. And I believe it's imperative, since we have had numerous ceasefires with Hamas, all of which they have violated, to try finally to dislodge Hamas and allow the Palestinians to have other leadership that will actually once again work for a two-state solution, which should be the outcome that we all hope and pray for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's what's funny. The biggest deal when I think about all of this is, I think about Anwar Sadat. For me, he was a beacon. If you don't know who he was, look him up. He was somebody who felt that there was a better way for everybody to exist in Israel.
Well, but can I say something?
Yes,
because that's
please.
a really important point. So, Israel and Egypt fought wars. That's part of this complex history that people need to educate ourselves about. And after fighting wars, Sadat went to Israel and made peace with the then current Israeli government. And that ended. That's why you see the current Egyptian government working to try to get supplies into Gaza, to try to get civilians and foreign nationals and wounded people out of Gaza. So there's a working relationship now between Egypt and Israel. Jordan and Israel made a peace agreement. I was there to see that happen. So people should not get hopeless. There is hope, but you have to remove from the scene terrorists like Hamas who don't believe in peace. They don't believe in it for their own people. They are using their own people as shields, and they don't believe that it's possible to do with Israel. Let's try to have people who can lead us to peace.